Welcome to our evening session, Thursday evening, July 28th, 2011. Michael Lee is our first speaker. He's worked in construction for a while. His main work, really, his passion in life, is that he's a garage experimenter. He's been doing this for 10 years, and you can see the results in front of you. He's found some raw principles and methods to confirm what Tesla had told us over 100 years ago. He has his company called MagnaVex Research Project. Let's welcome Michael Lee.
Some juice. There we go. We're going to start this off in a calm. This is a series of magnets neodymium. I'm going to pass them around the room. This is all about the force. It's all about energy. If you want to pass them along, as long as they get back to me, I'll be happy. Be careful not to let them slam to each other because they'll shatter, and the small pieces are sharp. Separate them, you can feel the positive and negative, because that's all there is. Okay? So this evening, I hope that I set a standard for we're trying to reach a peak here of what I am considering interdimensional energy. And I appreciate the This is a little booklet. Knocked it off, knocked out the batteries.
Hold on just a second.
Test live. I can project pretty good. This was printed in 1984. And it talks about Nikola Tesla. And I usually try to introduce people. Hopefully, I would believe everyone that's here knows somewhat information about Tesla. They're Tesla coils. And it reads, large Tesla coils can produce millions of volts and are used to make spectacular electrical displays. But that's about all. The Tesla coil has never been much more than a toy, excellent for a wide variety of adolescent mayhem, but having no important scientific or industrial application. This device, which obsessed Tesla for the last half of his life, is now only a curiosity. I beg to differ. Hopefully this evening, I will bring about some relative ideas on a very small scale that bring back that vision, what Tesla had, and hopefully, because I don't believe in my lifetime, I personally, which way does this thing work? Just push it, and it should dial me? Running slides? Well, we can do it without it. Remote? A, B, left. There we go. Fulfilling the dream. We want to fulfill that dream, every one of us.
Hold on, I got a wrench.
That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, tighten the loose.
That's what we need. You know, it's all technology. So let's move this along here. At Tesla's time, he brought out this idea of light, okay? And it's an interdimensional force. Again, this is the whole system. This is going to be the first premise of everything that I'm doing tonight. We're living in a sea of energy, okay? We are like, they showed a fish in the water. We are the fish in the water, but we've evolved. We are now breathing, living entities of that radiant force. It's the very fabric of ideas and concepts that are you, okay? So how does this fit with Tesla's work? There's an unstoppable power in the universe, okay? And it moves in certain patterns. And the vision of that concept is about understanding the pattern of that principle. Once you understand the principle of the design of energy, in that process, every one of you can use that same principle for whatever you're working on in your life. Because the principle is the concept of the structure of the formation of the design of the movement and the very structure of not only your evolution, but the evolution of all the kingdoms, animal, plant, mineral, vegetable, whatever else there are, in a multi-dimensional universe. As I said, this is not about talking straight third-dimensional physics. This is talking about an evolution of our being as an energy force. And once we understand that, as you can see in that picture, Leonardo da Vinci had the idea of flying. We now can fly, but Nikola Tesla had the idea of traveling to the stars. We ain't there yet. We cannot get there with rocket fuel. We need to understand the principles that function within the universe. And that's a vast, deep concept on how these things work. That's the importance of the Tesla coil. So to say that they're not important in commercialization, they are very important because they are a transposer of a wide variety of spectrums, because they allow you to manipulate the field in certain relationships of balance. In my research of ideas, I've always heard that there's wireless electricity, and people are working on it, and we're going to have that. I'm waiting to see it. I don't believe it'll happen in the way that it's being tried, because in our cycle of energy, of the sine wave, at 60 cycles, it is a snail's pace in comparison to the high supersonic designs of the creative force of infinite intelligence. How do I know these things? Well, in my own life experiences, I've had numerous instances of meeting people, just reading in my own personal life of visions or conquests, so to say, of trying to understand those ideas that actually brought me to these awarenesses. There's some very hands-on ideas. So hopefully the magnets are making their way around so everybody can just feel the force. This is a pine cone. Everybody's seen that. Hopefully you've walked in the forest at least once or twice, and you've seen these type of things. There's a spiral there. Everybody's walked along the ocean, and that same pattern exists. Two different kingdoms. And if we go back in time to a fossil, supposedly 1 million years old, that pattern exists there also. Now, if we want to continue, which in this presentation you'll see, is that we too have that spiral. So why is that important? Well, Tesla as a thinker, as a visionary, these principles of how this stuff works as electricity and the force needs to be there first and foremost. All the other things that we have become trash. They become the elements that fill the dumps. If we don't use this as a regenerative condition that builds a society that's structured along the designs of nature, that's why I showed you these. They're very important. And once we move out of that progression and that sequence of that step along those patterns,
what ends up happening, you create a degenerative pattern, which nature does also. We now have those canisters filled with radioactive waste that are the degenerative fields of energy, okay? How do we put that back into the force? There's a science of energy, okay? That word is going to become the dominant thought in your mind tonight. It's energy. Electricity, magnetism, the vortex, frequency and harmonics, oscillation, the sine wave, and cyclic motion. Some of that is not known, but truly in the universe, that is the very fabric of energy. It's a cycle. And within that cycle, if you look closely, there are two wires that are one, and they're intertwined. They're really positive and negative. And it depends on your perspective. So why am I relating this? I'm trying to set the stage here for why I got into researching this, okay? And what does that mean? Can you tap that force? I believe you can. Do we want to tap that force? I believe we should, because it's the pulse that's in my heartbeat. It's the breath that I breathe. So why should I not build a device that works in synchronization with that fabric of nature? I think we should. Can that be done? Yes. Have others done it? Yes. Are we doing it? Not necessarily so. So the key to unlocking the energy secrets are the sine wave. There's a higher interdimensional force they call the fourth dimension. There's a fifth dimension, sixth dimension, seventh dimension, and beyond that flows down into what we call the third dimension. The third dimension, if we want to look at it this way, is the spectrum of what they are calling the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. That's a relative frequency that is considered the third dimension. There's a transduction from the infinite universe to the lower universe, so to speak, and at that point is where we are. That's why we see what we see. There's a factor there. Now, if you look at this, there is a nodal point in the middle. That is supposedly from C to C, and it's considered a love frequency is considered 528. Anybody that's into music and stuff like that. This is hypothetical, this is my reasoning, this is my theory of concepts that I'm presenting you here this evening, is that our electricity fluctuate at 60 cycles between positive and negative. If we build our systems with high frequency oscillators that fluctuate on a love frequency or a closer harmonic of that, we are then building in design and in step with nature. That's how the balance works. 60 cycles. If Tesla, that was just one element that he moved to, he moved into high frequency. Once he moved into high frequency, which I'll show this evening, this single wire without return, he lost that, and the earth became the single wire, became the conductor. So this evening, what this is showing, you're all waiting to see, but this is my time to kind of introduce to you that there's a vast amount of knowledge and wisdom that goes into this, not on my part, because I'm not telling you anything new. These are from individuals, Tesla, Walter Russell, Ernest Norman, Howard Johnson, other people that have been out there who have made conclusions. There's plenty of you out there who are seeing the same thing and what's going on here. That spiral, that pattern. So in Colorado, in my understanding and my research of stuff, Tesla was able to formulate an idea of how to match the resonant frequency of the Earth, or what they consider the Schumann cavity. Okay? There is a point of entry that we can tap into. That is true. Do we know how to do it? Probably not completely. Are there means and method to do that, to tap that force? Yeah, I think we're going to have to go through some hardcore experiments, and that's what I'm doing here. Natural power. We've all seen this stuff, so it's nothing new to anybody. This is what's going on. That's a tornado, and who knows how to stop one of them? None of us. But with comprehending how this structure of energy works, I believe man can evolve to that point. I do believe very strongly in star people, UFOs, and that interdimensional concept that they know. I believe I've lived before. I know I will live again. Just as that seed that fell from that tree will regenerate and become the tree, I too am a part of that design. I cannot step outside of that ring. That is what they call the life force. So anybody that does actually put themselves out of that synchronization of what infinity has presented you as the very vital spark of who and what you are. So this is the time in the slideshow that I'm going to run a Tesla coil. A couple of them, or kind of get you excited. So hopefully I haven't been too long-winded to kind of see what's happening. But there's a couple other little things. This is a simple demonstration. Show it to your sons and daughters. It's about resonance. With a pulse, just like your heartbeat, it continuously wants to sing. That's what a Tesla coil will do. Once it's timed and once it reaches a crescendo, it wants to re-oscillate upon itself. It's a simple toy. It's been around for a long time. But that's what energy does. So this thing about how the movement of energy happens and where it is, in a theory that I'm working on, it's based on a vortex. And there's a lot of people in the vortexes. When this unspirals, it becomes a circle. And when the two polarities of positive and negative, they want to attract to each other, they create the infinity. And when they are trying to attract again, they can't because they repel. That's what they have considered in times the clover. If you find the lucky clover, well, I believe that's what that's all about. It's how energy patterns itself. And once we are now at that stage of evolution that we are responsible for that information. The ancients, if anybody studied ancient Atlantis or Lemuria, they all had the same type of ideas. There are other historians who brought this out. There's people out there who are researching deep into that. Amid the pyramids, some say it's real, some say it's not. I believe it truly is. We're kind of a lost culture in our designs because we're still struggling with understanding ourselves. We still love blowing each other up. That's my own personal philosophy, which I don't always like to throw out there, but it's very real. This is another quick demonstration before we fire these up. These are two magnets, two neodymium magnets, just like the ones I passed around. They're balanced right now, okay? This kind of gives you a sense of the sea of energy. This is another set of magnets, okay? So you can see that I'm able to move that. Sure, it's just the electromagnetic field moving, but that's everything that we're doing. So when you breathe, you also are oscillating in and out in that electromagnetic field, in that force. They're strong enough. That's what's in wind generators. That gives you electricity. Magnets are a window into that force. You move the magnet across a coil of wire, it excites the electrons. The electrons want to run, but they run at the certain speed of whatever resistance they're contained within, and they can't get up to the higher frequency. That's what a Tesla coil can do. When you have a certain input, a certain power, it gives you a means and method to transpose. So people out there who are looking for over-unity devices, you're always going to run into the same condition or problem because you're going to try to hook that up into our nowadays systems. It'll never work. You need an instrument, which I believe a Tesla coil is, to transpose the energy that you give it to take it into a high frequency. In that high frequency, you can then step it back down. That was the magic Tesla did. A lot of people have disputed was it possible to transmit electricity over a single wire? This evening I'm going to show you that. This is a Tesla coil that's hooked up. This is a solar charger control box. I took a class up in Hopland, California at the Solar Living Institute. Great place. It's about sustainable living. We're at a point where we need to understand sustainable living. This hooks up to a solar panel I have, runs in here through a charge converter. It runs into a DC 12-volt battery. Out of the 12-volt battery is a 1500-watt inverter, which gives me my 110. Out of my 110, it drops in to a very small little Tesla coil. This is small scale, 6,000 volt step-up transformer, capacitor in there, 0.005, I think it's 15 kilovolt, and it runs through just a basic, old spark gap technology. Pulses the primary at a certain frequency. Tesla understood that there was a quarter wavelength that this pulse of this tank circuit needed to be within that would pulse the secondary, which would give you a resonant rise of your frequency of electricity, of the movement of that oscillation from positive to negative. And what that did, it gave you the ability, people want to see the sparks. My system's tame. And that's the thing about Tesla understood it. It's about induction. This is a single wire. Okay? And this, all of these, you can see they're all tuned because this tunes this, which tunes this, which tunes this, which tunes this. It's all about this idea. Resonance, tuning, selectivity. This is, in one sense, part of the safety or safe. Let me see if I can move these because they're. It also is, if you have to remember when you have two coils, one coil can tune another coil. Those are electrical engineers. And a coil that's not in resonance can detune a coil. You know, when you have people who say, hey, I got good vibes, or I don't have good vibes, that's what it's all about. So what can a Tesla coil do? What do you want it to do? What do you want that force and that element to be a part of? Well, we wanted wireless electricity. So why shouldn't we have wireless electricity? It's a motor. It's a small motor. This is what I learned from at the very beginning. People said it was impossible to do. It's not. There's enough electricity off the radiant force to charge your cell phone. Anywhere in your house. So how is that done? For those that are into electronics of things, you get rid of the spark gap and you put it into integrated circuitry. You drop one of these at your power meter, set it up correctly where it's pulsing at the right frequency. You take a potentiometer on hooked up to your light and you dial it. What that does, give you correct resistance to the frequency of whatever that's set up, turns on your light because now you have a pathway for the electricity to follow. That's magic. That's what they call magic. It's very basic principles of the movement of the sine wave between positive and negative at a particular frequency. We fluctuate at 60 cycles and we're pushing great amperages to make something happen. Well, take that amperages, convert it to higher voltage at thousands of times per second instead of 60 cycles. What then happens as you moved up into a higher octave or spectrum of where electricity is free to do its force, because it is the life force, it's the dominant factor of the universe. There is nothing else. That is the God force. The thunderbolts. Why do you think they called it that? These things aren't fabricated out of mythology. These are the memories of our ancients who understood those beings who comprehended the ability to move that amount of power. It's a great responsibility. Why don't we have it today? Because I believe we still love blowing up each other. That's what'll happen. Because unleashing that type of force comes responsibility. So, am I here to preach to you how to live your life? No. That's your business. That's your karma. I know that if you blow up this world, there's millions and trillions of worlds I can go live on. That's my belief system. Okay? That's not my worry. My worry is my own progression of understanding of how this works in my life. Why did I come here this evening? I felt somewhat compelled to share knowledge that I've searched out in my garage for years of saying, Tesla was right. What's wrong with them people? Why did we not follow that pathway 100 years ago? We are now lagging because we're trapped in a zone where we've already putrefied our earth, we've putrefied our systems. Now we got to play catch up. We need to readdress those negative energies, those negative circumstances, and reactivate those forces because they don't go away. Somebody's going to have to, in their physics of understanding of the compounds of those structures, re-energize the atom we just split because it's all a part of that sea of energy. We cannot remove ourselves from that. Nature is inclusive of all things. That's why they call it infinity. Okay? These are real. Robert had introduced me to Walter Russell about 2 years ago. I was fascinated by his work, and I believe 100% in what he has brought about. I have the book, The Secret of Light. I'm working into the Universal One right now. Those concepts are the ideas of the movement of energy that give you access to the ability to use the constructive knowledge to make instruments that are designed closer and harmonious into the pattern of nature. So, where do we go with this? Creative principles and laws of science. We're kind of stuck, and I'm just bringing this out because I'm seeing this too. I'm sitting in the chair listening to me. I'm not out here as some expert. I have no degree. I'm a college dropout. I have no schooling in electronics. All I've done is read books, and I've tried it hands-on. Yeah, I've zapped myself a couple times where I thought I was seeing stars for the rest of my life because it's a force to respect, very much so. But as I read more and more about how that force worked, I learned that there are ways and means that you and I can handle that force responsibly. I guess that gives me a picture of me. Principle, structure of the atomic field. There are things that are there. Once we get into that, what it does is it allows us access into the infinite. The atoms are the smallest exchange point from the positive to the negative. Or actually, there are smaller and smaller and smaller infinitum, but an atom is relative to what we here in this third dimensional dimension is actually, that's the fabric that we can work with. In another dimension, there'll be another energy plasma fabric that we'll work with. If you want to go lower, you can. But I would rather ascend to the next levels. So we see that the infinite flows into the finite, which is what we see. All these things here are connected to this sea of energy that is stemming down. It gives us the multifacets of the universe of what we see. It gives us the multifacets of individualization. Every one of you are a piece of the puzzle that makes the infinite the fabric of what we see. I am just a reflection of that design of the universe. I'm here as a representative, so to say, of that energy force, which is really you. I'm trying to structure my life on higher concept because I have found things of my past and things that I've done that I'm not as proud of, that I'm learning to rectify in my own design of balance of energy, because that's what really it comes down to. It comes to the balance of the variances of the pressures of energy. That's really all there is. The living vortex. And this is where some of the ideas that I've come up with have been inspired by over the years. I got into the works of Ernest L. Norman, which many of you have heard probably of the Unaris Academy of Science, and maybe some of you haven't. Ernest Norman was a co-founder of that. The ideas of where I'm coming from today are based upon some of his ideas, some of his principles and concepts. Very vast, very deep. It becomes almost just like anything you read, it then becomes you. Now that I've entered in and reading other people's works, I have taken those on as part of the fabric of who and what I am, to also live in that comprehension of those designs because they're real. That's how the mighty sequoias and the redwoods grew for such a long time. I wish to do the same. The universal spiral, it's everywhere. And so once we begin to understand that this design, this pattern, is the expression of the cause, we are seeing the effect in all of the things that we see in the universe on the exterior of what is really a supportive energy force that is within. The masters have talked about it, that kingdom within, that still small voice, that quiet space, that's where that pulse originates from. Are these things real? I believe they are. There's a point in this evolution. This is the paradigm shift where the quantum physics is going to have to begin to see that there is an evolution of spirit, an evolution of self that is based upon patterning of that expression of energy. Fibonacci, back in the 15th century or whatever, they began to see that there was a sequence of numbers. Those sequence of numbers created patterns. Those patterns we begin to see in nature. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. If you look at the 5 fingers on your hands, all the things in your body, there are processes of life that function according to those rhythms. The ancients knew that. The Aztecs understood it with their calendars. The cycles, the Native Americans understood it. We've kind of lost that. The golden means. It's even in our storms. Nature's pattern. So, I want to bring this out because you and I are the connecting link to this high-frequency electronics, to this high-frequency system. Because once you put man into that equation, everything's going to work differently. Everything will work differently. And that's what we want to see. We want to see an evolution of what we're doing and how we're doing it. There are so many experiments that I've tried, so many things that I've gone through just because if I was schooled, yeah, it would probably help me. If I was around people who understood more of some of these things, yeah, it would probably help me. But I've also kept myself somewhat unbiased to try things that were not necessarily known and to see if I could figure it out on my own. Now, if I let this wire go, it wants to run. It becomes part of the field of where we are. And you have to remember that this is a field of energy, a sea of energy. On the larger system that I'm going to set up, if I touch it, it actually helps it run faster. That's what we want. The human being is part of that inductive force. This is wireless, remember. It's picking up off the radiant field of a Tesla coil. Okay? People said Tesla didn't know what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about. Is this anything different than anybody's seen? Is this anything out of the ordinary? I don't know. Am I the first one that's trying to reproduce some of Tesla's experiments on wireless energy to be able to transfer power? Single wire without return? Maybe I'm talking to the choir here and everybody already knows these things. And if that's true, why aren't we doing that? Why are we still trapped and why are we still stuck not being able to move out of that structure of 60 cycles? People are feeling sick. They say the new smart meters are causing radiant fields. Well, if we tune our systems to a correct octave and a correct sequence of the pulse of that, and we are beginning to find, people are out here talking of how the human being oscillates on certain things. Well, let's build our systems along those lines. I'm just trying to throw the vision out there. If we do that, why would it not if the laws of energy prove true, why would it not also enhance the growth of things? Instead of trying to manipulate the design, why do not we grow in step with the design? So I hope that the language that I'm speaking is a little bit, it kind of gears the mind to kind of get this vision that there's a sea of energy, okay? This sea of energy, we are all particles of that sea of energy, and yet we are a sea of energy. So there's this multifaceted universe, yet let's bring it down to the ground. We are in the third dimension. We have the physical things. They're all true. But the principle that makes those things function are very real, that actually help the progression of those motions of energy. For instance, when you're a little kid, you go take something or you destroy something, and your parents give you a smack on the bottom, and you say, hey, you're a naughty little boy. And you have anger towards them. And you feel really bad. Okay? That's a vibration. If you continue that vibration, it can give you an ulcer. Energy creates energy. Patterns create patterns. This is the knowledge that the ancients knew, and when they stepped that up to the next level, they were able to capture the electromagnetic fields, which gave them access to be able to ride on their starships, because they understood that the Earth is the polarity of energy, positive, negative oscillation. They structured their devices, positive, negative oscillations, that were able to balance upon that spectrum of electricity. Okay? So here's something that kind of shows this whole idea, is that this small system is one frequency. Now, this larger system that I'm going to begin to set up won't run any of these. And that bothered me for a long time. And the reason why you see so many coils is because I tried different coils to say, okay, I learned that, okay, if the coil is longer, wider, thinner wire, fatter wire, it would tune it to a particular frequency. So I made a lot of coils because I didn't know what else to do, because I didn't know how to run an oscilloscope. Those that know could tune this thing, dial it in, and know exactly how it works. This is just hands-on, raw experiments to get something to happen. And that's what I did. So in the process, I wanted to see something light. I wanted something, because, they said there's magic, there was power. Well, I wanted to see a larger light bulb light. I wanted to see 110 watts or whatever is there. But I learned that high-frequency radiant energy is different than normal 60-cycle AC, 110. And that's the difference that we're going to have to adapt to if we truly want to become star travelers. Sure, we can have what we have, and it's great, but you can take the energy from a solar panel, transpose it to high frequency, send it to your neighbor or whoever's out in the community, because they don't have the ability to do that. You can transpose it back down in many varieties of usable function. Okay? So I'm going to try a few things. Now, I ran into a couple problems last night on setting this up. You have to look at the bottom of these tables. They're all metal. Metal creates a ground point. It gives everything ground. So what I'm going to do is kind of show what goes on here. This is a little larger Tesla coil. It does similar principle and design. The principle, that's what we want to know, right? We're all searching for that principle so we can make our own little things or whatever it might be, our inventions work. It's not about the invention, it's about the principle that makes it function. Once you understand that energy process of what it does between the oscillation between positive and negative, the more intelligent it has, the faster it vibrates. The slower, not necessarily the less intelligent it has, the slower it vibrates, but there's a certain sequence of how it moves. Our chemistry, as you're following the pattern of electricity, it also develops and designs the chemical reactions that we have according to particular frequencies of each positive or negative bias that a component or a compound has. So it's probably a lot of words, a lot of ideas. I don't know if it's stimulating any questions in your mind or if I'm putting you all to sleep, but hopefully that it's it's bringing about some ideas here. We're going to set this aside and try some things here this evening. So while I'm working this, are there any thoughts, comments, or questions that you might have at this moment while we're moving this forward? Yes? That's me. That's some of the ideas of what I've been working on. I used to do greeting card design at one time. Painted angels and wizards. If you look up moonfeather.org, you can see some of my old works of art. I still paint. This has kind of taken over my life in a certain way just because I'm interested in it right at this time. At that time I was interested in art, and now I'm doing this. But what does the painting mean? It's the twin opposing vortexes, positive and negative. One's clockwise, one's counterclockwise, and in the middle is really the Earth, which is really the atom, which is really you and I. So in the universe, it's really winding up and unwinding, and we're a part of that stream of energy somewhere along the line. Yes? Repeat that again. I am not. Sure. This is just basic tank circuit. It's old radio spark technology. And they're, like I said, once we understand the principle, you can do a lot of different things. I'm just showing DC can work. Is it different than AC? One, for me, in learning of this, AC is an oscillation between positive and negative. DC is a direct line. But really, DC is AC. AC can become DC on how you separate it out. We need both. DC gives you an ability to store energy for a current or however you need it for an end result of some type of force. AC gives you the movement so that you can take it to where you want it to go, and usable however you, I mean, there's many varieties of things. Sure, sure. There, right now in this one, it's just a, basically all there is there's two tungsten gaps, and then there's a fan there, just kind of blows out the gap a little bit. It's just a 15,000 volt neon sign transformer and a capacitor. I mean, it's just nothing new. I mean, all this stuff is 100 years old. So, and again, I am not the expert. Those that have been in the electronics field, they teach you this stuff in basic school. What I'm drawing conclusions about is the pattern and the expression of that electrical energy. You had a question? Sure. Tesla has a patent, and we'll continue this going here too, as I'm setting it up. I don't know if that's still live for the, maybe I'm not working this thing right. There we go. Man is the fulcrum, the spiral. Every little child has it, you have it. The human electromagnetic field. Your thoughts create that. Actually, they help shape that, not necessarily create it. Field of the heart. We all have that. It's that toroid. It constantly oscillates, brings in the influx, the outflux. universal systems, that kind of represents the myth of free energy. That's what we all want, or what we're striving for, or hopefully, that we can come together as a society. Energy is, if you want to call it a God-given thing, everybody has it. It's a universal force. It's everywhere. So I understand that there's going to be a need for people, to commercialize and build out at all costs. It takes somebody to give energy to something, somewhere, somehow. But I think we need to have a new, different way of being able to do that, to where it actually enhances the growth of people's lives, not necessarily burdening them, if I can say that. What I'm going to do is move this away further out. We haven't tried that last night. This is a 50-foot wire, and it may not work really good. Like I say, in my garage, I have wireless electricity anywhere around my garage because the wire is elevated and it's held up on a set of hooks that are along the rafters.
By the way, while he does his test, this meter over here is testing the signal-to-noise ratio on all of the audio systems and the video systems. The two different choices are the audio and the video systems. So when he fires this up, and you see the different devices begin to light with nothing connected to them, you'll see what the difference and the impact is to just regular radio frequency, different bands of RF, and audio equipment, because this is also testing the wireless mic that he's got on him. So you'll be able to see that if there's any wild distortion going over here. You can see my voice literally as I come, but look at that. There's a very clear defined line. The signal-to-noise ratio is very crisp. We've got this down to, it's a 300 meg, but it's extremely low time constant right now, so you can see what the signal-to-noise ratio is. It's very close. But the moment he fires that up, you'll be able to see that. And if you want to look over there, that tells you how clean the energy really is.
It's different. Again, I'm not trying to throw big sparks or massive sparks. Those that know how to do that, and you see on this, they all have a styrofoam ball wrapped in foil. It creates a capacitive end, and it creates a pulse wave or a radiant wave in the system, which is a little bit different than other things that have been set up by other people. And I have nothing against what they're doing. I just read in my reading of Tesla that really wasn't what he was trying to do. What he was working on was a means and method to be able to transpose electricity throughout the earth. Let's see if we can roll this down. Let's go back right here. There are patents, and that's 1914. Electrical energy distribution, that's his magnifying transmitter. It's available for anybody. We're part of it. There's a lot of sci-fi stuff that people are leading directions, and there's a lot of truth to that, because anything that's a vision of somebody is really a concept that they've somewhere experienced. At that time, they said Tesla had a Pierce Arrow that was able to drive 100 miles an hour off of the radiant energy off that Weidencliff tower that he built. That tower, the base of that is still active today. We'll come back to this. The Tesla Society out of Philadelphia, they invited me to come do a presentation here. It was on July 4th. It was just too much of a squeeze to try to put this all together. But they are trying to purchase that land. That is Tesla's laboratory. It's the last piece that exists at this time. The underground cavern that is into the ground 200 feet below that he used to stand that tower up is still there. Agfa Films owns that property. I think it's a shame that the United States has not made that, at this time, a historical museum and made it a research institute for people who are exploring that idea. Can that be? Could that be restructured? I believe it is. It's not that much money, 1.6 million. Why should we not? That would fulfill the dream. Could we do that? I think there's enough information. If I can do this by reading books and studying his works with no electrical background, I'm stressing that, because those that have the electrical background, the principle of this idea, you could take that into any avenue you want. I'm not interested in that. I was interested in understanding those concepts of energy because I'm looking for something else. This is just a means for me to use what I'm working on. I needed somehow to transpose that. This is not my real science of what I'm looking for. I needed a means where it could go. I needed a way to harness the end result. So what you were talking about, there's this radiant receiver. His car had a radiant receiver on it. Pick up the radiant field, the movement of that oscillation. You dump it down into a set of storage capacitors, and you have power at the other end. We'll see if tonight if we can get it to work. Usable power at the far end from a single wire without return. The earth actually becomes the single wire. I just don't have the ability, but in the right resonant design, the right comprehension of those ideas, the principles, those that understand that, because this is not a toy, it's an instrument of transposition of electricity. And those that understand how that works can then take that and use it for some usable instruments into this world. I would like to not have to charge my cell phone or all these other things. I'd like to be able to have them be able to do that on their own. Is that not the vision of where we're going? Our future? I would hope so. Let's see if we can make this work. Everything's about tuning. It's all about resonance. I've tried different areas. I'm sure those that have worked with Tesla coils, you know that you have to have. Let's look at the center of the table. Yes. It's telling me there's an overload, and what the other was that the signal, because these tables, I don't have, at my house, I don't have anything that shows, it may not do its thing. The tables, if you understand, they create a ground point, and everything becomes more live, but it shows that there's nothing there except for a single wire between these two. And to be able to run this and to have it set up, now why that one on the far end's not working? Only because you need something to bring it close to it. Let me do something on the inside. Let me do something, because this is all how it happens. You can transfer power. We ran a motor last night, so I know it's doable. Those that have seen it know what it is. Let me adjust the gap, because this is stuff that anybody who's into modern electronics, you know how to pulse the wave. You know how it's done. Again, I'm not an expert on how these things are. I'm just showing that there are elements that I think are forgotten or have been forgotten along the way. I have a piece of sandpaper. And what that'll do, it cleans out the inside of the spark. Part of the cleaning out the inside of the gap, because it gets carbon inside the points. What that does, and this is all of the stuff that if you read into Tesla's ideas, These were things that he ran into also. Let's see if we can make it oscillate, because these are all part of the principles of design. At least for a little bit, to show a few of the things here. So I don't know if you know, these concepts are relative to those who are into electrical engineering. Does it make sense? Is it a new idea? Is it an old idea? Is it something that that seems like could be fabricated? Mic is out. Check, check. Check. Mic check. When you run spark, part of the thing is, oh, I know why. What ends up happening in anybody that's worked with Tesla coils like this, static spark gaps, the gap in the course of time becomes, you know, all the spark in there, it gets dirty on the gap. And so the dirtiness of the gap prevents the oscillation, because again, this is what it's all about, is the pulse. And that's what we want, is the pulse. That on and off firing in that static spark gap releases the potential of the energy that's stored in those capacitors, that is stepped up to 15,000 volts in this neon sign transformer. It puts it into that capacitor, and when the capacitor says, hey, I can't hold anymore, it discharges it across that gap. That gap regulates the pulse, which sends into this primary, which stimulates this secondary. The wire coming from here normally runs to ground in all other Tesla systems. My Tesla system runs out to another coil. Okay? So if these two are in tune, you create a harmonic pattern between the two. And what that does, it creates a pressure wave. At least that's what I'm figuring is the effect that happens. And that pressure wave is that vibration of that radiant force. We have tapped into that C that I was talking about. That's the element that in this over-unity force of electricity that we're going to have to understand and comprehend. First things first. You can still hear the beep on this, but if you look at, I'm looking at the center. Okay, the center light is lighting up wirelessly off of the coil that's coming off of this one. Okay? And you have to remember, 110, are they 110? They're not. They are, the resistance of that bulb is really what is creating the light. It's not necessarily the force that's being shoved in it to create the heat. How's that? And I'm this far away. Does that work? Let me shut it off now. These, like I say, in my garage as a garage explorer, this validated something for me, that a single wire, because in our electrical systems, correct, we usually take black, white, and brown. This gives you the idea that you have a single wire that's able to run out, which what I talked about, Tesla used the earth as his wire. He set his tower into the earth, vibrated the earth, because he tuned it to the resonant frequency of the sea that it also exists in, with the atmosphere was able to work that at the right frequency. So anywhere on the earth, I have a coil, my house has a coil, a tuner, that it sets up and is able to tap in. So Robert, maybe you could give me a hand a second. Maybe both of you guys. If you just hold those face out like this, there's two motors. When I turn that on over here, if you actually just stand like about right here, those two motors should turn on. Yeah. And you may have to get a little closer. Let's turn this motor around. Because what this demonstrates is that if I can work this is my problem because it's how I set this up. I would like to have a bigger power source. I'm working really small scale, okay? And that's all I'm saying. Who are those that know how to work power sources?
I need something, you know, it may be because it's only 1,500 watt motor in there. It may need a bigger power source. It needs something
that's modulated correctly, that when you have this oscillation that can be worked. These things are understood. It's not, you know, again.
And don't get excited if both their headlights come on bright. It's normal.
So we have two wireless motors, a light off of the radiant field that this is tapped onto, single wire without return on the far end. Okay? That's how he drove his car. At least that's what I believe is how he was able to get his car. You can set him down. Very cool. Thank you. What that shows is if your municipality power station transformed the electricity at the source to a high frequency, you take that, work it, you could use the power lines that are in the grid, but if our instruments or load is tuned to a proper design, you would then, the load factor is not the same because you have resonance. And resonance is the key to the equation of how all things work. So this may be hard to see on the very far end. Let's see if we can get this little baby to run. It's a little sewing machine motor that I kind of made out of an old jigsaw. So it means that you can get true usable force from a single wire without return. And if I set it up correctly, what you can end up seeing is that you can take that little motor, stick it on the other ones, and get usable force from that radiant energy. Motor's running. Okay? Well, unplugged it. That's all right. So, now, the ideas, I'm just presenting you concepts of equations that are possible with Tesla's ideas. So should we go bigger? Can there be other instruments? Well, because once you go larger, there are designs and principles of things of how to handle radiant force and radiant energy. There's some new technologies out there that are called ultracapacitors. I think they are the means and method for us to be able to transpose the force. There's a design you have to have. So right at this moment, nothing. Okay? This is 1 1/3 horsepower skill saw motor. Now, will it do it instantaneously? No, because there's this factor of what we call time. Time and energy, it all goes together. There really is no time, but it's how it's all put together in the proper time sequence. See if I can get this to charge enough over time. See if you can hit the switch if there's any power there at all. Okay. That's a charge. Now that tells me that my cell phone can be charged anywhere, wherever I'm standing. I don't know why. I'm not a physicist, I'm not a scientist. I'm just learning from other people, sharing about the principles of energy. The principle, once you understand the principle of how it moves, how it functions, it gives us the relative design on building different systems. This is 100-year-old technology. So who's going to patent this? The patents are already there. Nikola Tesla did. And that's why I'm saying I'm trying to fulfill the dream.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Mike kind of cuts it a little bit short so that he can spend time with Q&A.
There you go.
And what's going to happen is that we request that you walk up here so that your questions can be on the DVD, so that those that want a copy of this, they can get it. You're going to line up right here. Mitch is going to hand you the mic, and after you've asked your question, please give the mic back to Mitch. The line starts here.
Let me unhook this wire just for the moment, just so in case somebody walks by it. But all I want to say is that through experimentation, through understanding, through research and proper funding on things, this is doable. This is real. It's not fake. It's not magic. It's just understanding the concepts of an idea of a man 100 years ago that was kind of shoved aside because of whatever, it's none of my business of why it went down the road it is, but we now have a situation to deal with, and here we are.
Hi, John Maluski here. A question about Tesla's car, electric car. Is that close? Yeah, a question about Tesla's electric car. You say he had that tower there. How far away was the tower from the car when it was running?
Well, here's the thing about radiant energy. We're living in a sea.
Right.
He understood because he stimulated, I believe, the very fabric. At that time, the signals were clean. Today we have so much dirty space, dirty electricity. Nothing's tuned. I believe, I don't know exactly how far away, but I have a book. I'm not sure if the Tesla Society has it or not. It's about a patent where Tesla was actually in a trial, defending his patent. He described his ideas. That's where I got this from.
I understand that he drove the car, was from Albany to Buffalo.
I would believe it's real.
That's what I heard, but
I
where was
believe
the
it's real.
tower? Was the tower in between, or was that out in Colorado?
Well,
Or was it in
no,
Long
he
Island?
did, the car I believe was in New York, but this is the concept, okay? If your car had, radiant energy, once you activate it at the right frequency, what you end up doing, it's not about draining from the radiant energy. He transposed it. He met a few people, I forget the guy's name, who was into, not the cathode ray tube, but Farnsworth, or not Farnsworth. There was somebody else he worked with, and they were developing the tubes at the time. And certain elements were there where they had storage devices. So he captured the radiant field, transposed it. He didn't run it off specifically off the tower, I believe. He was able to transpose the energy, capture the energy, reuse it so you had usable current on the far end to turn the wheels or whatever you needed as a continuum and the right charge, discharge of your system.
Yeah, I think I understand he had multiple levels of capacitors, some in series,
Sure,
some in
sure.
parallel, so he could take a high voltage and bring it down to DC.
Very true.
But I was just wondering where your talkie show a couple pictures of his
I
towers.
don't
was
have
wondering,
that.
Would he use that tower, or I thought he might
The
show
tower,
it, or-
okay, the
and then
tower
just
has,
throw it out later on.
the tower's been destroyed. It was torn down. They blew it up, but the base of the tower still exists at that property up in New York that I showed you here. Where he built that tower. Where
Was
the
that in
tower-
Long Island? He
That's
had
the
a tower
one.
in Long Island. Oh,
Working
then
clip.
but he was supposed to be, the tower was in Long Island. He was running, I think, from Buffalo to
Doesn't matter.
Albany.
Once you energize the force, I mean, that's why I say, you
could work
tap this
anywhere.
into a ground on the earth, you got it anywhere. It's wireless electricity 100 years ago. This is real.
By the way, the distance on that, there were documented tests over 1,600 miles, and there's undocumented that individuals in Siberia were harvesting the energy while he was running not just the Northern Cliff, but also the Colorado springs, either one, when we had energized, they were
Same idea. This is what it's about. This is what we're trying to work with, you know, not to destroy each other with it.
I thought that the...
Say your name, say your first name when you come up to ask a question.
Sterling Allen with PESM. What would you consider to be the best source for people to learn more about this Tesla coil transmission and the possibilities of the technology?
Okay. I brought a couple books here. Again, you know, in the course of life, Tesla was very open. He did a lot of these demos like this. Marconi was sitting at his demos, and a lot of the other people that were around at the time that actually came forward and did patents because they seen what he was doing. He was very free giving out information. They took that information. But if you go and you research, this is a book, Nikola Tesla, The Invention, Writing, and Research of Nikola Tesla. You go look on this idea right here is exactly that print. And that's how I figured it out. It's not like I invented any of this. This all came from all of his patents. All of the information that you see here is from the Colorado Springs. It's very complex and mathematical equations, but if you understand what he was trying to convey in his notes to remind himself of what he did that day, you say, oh, those capacitors were doing this. He found that there was a leakage of electrical charge or discharge from that, so he had to rewire, set it up, different size coil. You understood he was transposing it to be able to send that force someplace.
Also, I'm curious, you've talked about some of the applications, but the number of applications of this Tesla coil technology include superluminal conveyance. I'm just wondering if you could maybe address some of the other applications that we could see from this technology.
Well, I believe part of it is in our healing part of our society. That once we begin to understand that we're electrical beings, that part of that, I think the Lakowski met Tesla, multi-wave oscillators, we begin to see that in our physics of even, what do they do, the magnetic resonance. We're going to begin to see not just the physical being, we're going to see that there's an electromagnetic field. And that is really where the condition or the karma exists that creates the problem in the body. So I think with high frequency, what this gives us a mean to transpose our lower frequencies up, because that's really where the magic, I believe, happens is at higher frequencies, not at 60 cycles. Once we get there and we transpose it, the radiant field gives us a visible spectrum, which is really invisible, but it transposed back down. I believe it gives us something that we can work with. Household power. I mean, I don't necessarily think that this is going to go directly to your car. We're too far away. We've got too many gasoline engines. But I do believe, there was somebody here earlier, Vernon talked about brown gas or hydrogen. I believe with this system off of radiant, you can then charge, transpose for hydrogen. It's the easiest means to get into a vehicle. We already have the vehicles. They can run on hydrogen. We need an operation of being able to charge or make electricity or have electricity to be able to make the gas. I believe that's a way to do it. Can that be done? Yeah. Your solar panels sitting on wherever Indian reservations, they have whatever devastation they have there. They now can have power at different areas. You can set up one solar panel collector, storage bank. If you transpose the electricity, just like your electrical junction stations, if you transpose it differently, you can get it to travel further or do different things by transposing it back down.
In your demonstrations, you're moving the coils back and forth. Is there a way to tune those without having to adjust the size and distance?
I believe there is. For those that understand LC circuits and capacitive resonance and all the things of coils, this coil, like I say, I've looked at numerous ideas off the internet of, you know, the size of the coil, the width of the coil. No one's really done it. But if you take an oscilloscope and you measure the L circuit across a coil, it tells you the frequency that it vibrates at. All of these were random because I went to the junkyard and I was able to get wire cheap, because wire is, what, $100 for a pound or anything. I mean, the cost has gone out of the roof. So a lot of this stuff is recycled materials. But you can take that, if you match the sizes, you match the frequency, or some nodal point of that frequency, I believe you'll get the same results that I have.
As this technology becomes more replete and a lot of people are using it, how would you prevent problems of interference of different units?
That's the thing that would need to be understood again on, like at the beginning here, when I brought one coil in, it detuned another coil. If you read some of Tesla's ideas, he talked about tunability and selectivity. Just like on your cell phone's a particular number comparable to your cell phone, we would need to set up each individual component tunable to a specific frequency off of a main carrier pulse that is your high octave that everything steps down. In that, no one could, if they are set up, it's almost like a lock and a key. It would be impossible for someone to break through on that frequency unless they knew the spectrum of what you were working on.
What about the sizes? You have, these are fairly large coils. How scalable is this in terms of going down and going up?
The principle, I believe, there's, Bill Wilcox out of LA area, who's made huge Tesla coils for massive demonstrations. The Tesla universe, they just end up having a Tesla-thon over here in Arizona just recently. I believe the principle of this, once understood, could be used on a larger scale to run industrial-sized motors. And it's not necessarily about the spark as how far the signal travels. At least there's an old radio friend of mine that he kind of gave me some ideas and I ran with it years ago. I used to, in my early days, I ran a printing press for almost 20 years in the printing trade. And he was the master, I was the apprentice. He was in the Tesla coil, so it kind of got me excited and I learned a lot from him. But he talked about it's the further the signal will travel is the higher the frequency. It's not necessarily the voltage or the current, it's the frequency of the voltage. And that's how what happens in the sea of energy is because we've pulsed. And that's really the whole oscillation of things, even these over unity machines. It's the right pulse. It's not like you're getting more power than you're putting in to get out. It's really creating a pressure to where you're getting this variance to allow the very essence of that energy to travel through things itself.
I understand that in the transmission of electricity that you don't have a drop-off over distance, that you can actually have an augmentation over distance. Have you noticed that yourself?
You know, and see, I'm not one to really ask because I'm not a schooled engineer, so I could never make any claims, but in showing this small design, I think if these were all tuned, we could probably put, I have no idea, we could stack 100 of them there, okay? It's just like on a radio station. How many radios can turn on in a household or in a car before it depletes the radio station? I think with Tesla coils and setting up correctly on resonance, resonance is a means to be able to transpose that vibration. In the transposition of that vibration, if every one of these are set up in the correct pulsation, the natural or periodic rate of their own particular frequency will harmonically tune to that frequency that is your signal. In that, are you creating a load? I believe if they're done correctly, you actually enhance the pulse if it's done at the right time. That's why people with oscilloscopes and stuff, there's the correct phasing of the positive and negative where the cycle hits. It can cancel things out or it can enhance the pulse, which I believe gives you the resonant rise.
Wouldn't that be a demonstration of over unity technology where you have one amount of input in your transmitter and then you have all these receivers?
Now that makes sense, yes. Yes.
Okay.
I believe that would answer that question, yes.
Okay.
That would, because that was really what Tesla was trying to work with. He was saying, hey, with a 100 horsepower steam engine generator device on my end, I'm able to resonate this at the right point. You got power for whatever you need. On the other end, now, you know, should I let the cat out of the bag or should I not? In my own experiments, maybe I will, just because it's an open forum. Can somebody take this and run with it and patent it? Maybe an open society. But if you take this and you run it into a generator that is set up correctly, like I had said, magnets spinning instead of just a saw, running magnets around a coil of wire, at the far end you actually have made a generator that can store energy into a battery, which actually runs your system, what more do you need?
I'm curious, worldwide, how many people would you estimate are experimenting along these lines?
I don't know. I haven't seen anybody do this on the internet yet. Maybe I'm the only one.
What about just experimenting with Tesla coils in general?
I don't know. I have no idea. See, my focus has been on my research of energy. And once I was able to get a skill saw to power up, not off a coil, but I believe it the right way in transposition, that could happen. But I have yet to see other people with usable force. Sure, LED lights, an LED light will light up by itself off the radiant energy. It doesn't need a coil. Okay?
We have an open source project at peswiki.com, that's peswiki.com, where we have a set of plans for these coils, and it seems like we had feedback from you on
You sent that to me, and
that.
I've seen that. I
Yeah.
believe that's real, and I passed it along.
And that was a fairly simple design. Wouldn't that take like a couple $100 or less of materials and maybe an afternoon to build?
I think it's, what you sent me was very real. Mine are just laid out differently. I think this is where some funding should be set up. People should be doing this. This is real. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I found. See you later, because I'm actually working on something else. I'm working on a generator to power up these. Okay, we need a way to transpose energy. Tesla gave us this. This is a 100-year-old idea. So for somebody to want to repatent it or reuse it, give credit where credit is due. This is this man's idea, and that's all I'm trying to do. I'm fulfilling that man's dream by at least saying, I spent the time, here's where it is, now take it to the next level. And I believe that's where our resources in our society, as those who understand how to get the energy stream, there are scientists who can do this. It's not that complicated. I mean, you got to do a lot of reading. I mean, 10 years is an understatement. I've been doing energy research since 1979 because of an experience I had where I had to learn how to heal myself.
I think in academia, the record for distance of wireless transmission is about 6 feet. And it seems like you're in excess of that. Have you tried presenting that to some of them, see what they say?
As an inventor, we need people like yourself who are the communicators that say, hey, let's take a look at this because it's real. As people, we need to work as a team, as a brotherhood of ideas and concepts to stay on the right focus. Because for me, people are going to take offense maybe to the far out ideas sometimes. There is some scientific processes that have to be done, but it takes a network. It takes a network.
Yeah. PES network. I'll pass this on.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Enjoyed it a lot. I'm Dr.
What was your first name?
Dr. Ralph Obriaco. I practice in Newport Beach. And my question is, I understand that 60 hertz, though it's a wonderful cycle for being able to transmit energy over power lines, it's really not good for living organisms. Did Tesla make any mention that if he were going to do a system of Borden Cliff Towers and he was going to supercharge the atmosphere, did he have any understanding or any thoughts on what that would do to living organisms?
That's something that we're going to have to learn. What do these organisms, what do they function on? What is their frequency? Everything is a frequency. We're going to have to understand that. It's not going to be an easy task. We're going to have to do the hardcore research of what does what to where. But I have seen in, even in the Tesla magazine they have, I think it's George Trinkus, he's got the books on how to actually grow, have a grow light with stuff where plants actually grow under high frequency better than just normal. Those things are real. So is 60 hertz the right? I think if we found the right frequency, I believe a low frequency, but you have to remember that if you play a C note here, you can play a C note here, you can play a C note here. So there are many, what we want to call nodal points. So if we reach some harmonic resonance somewhere, we are actually going to reach that, that balance. It's just a matter of how we get there. It's something to pursue, sure.
My name is Dave, and I'm interested if this technology has any comparison to what they're doing over in Alaska with that HARP technology.
That's a great question because I can't give you a great answer, but I know they're doing something. I wish I knew. I've been yet given top secret clearance, so they're telling me what's going on. I don't know. But I know that there is something to do. It is based on Tesla's idea. And are they trying to change the weather patterns? I think we can control the weather. It's ionization, but who controls who gets what kind of weather is the next moral question we're going to have to say. And so who controls what again? So we're back to the same thing of who controls power controls the world. Let's not go down that path.
Hello, my name is Frank with ThinkTankNow.com. My biggest concern is a lot of the power that we do send around, especially overhead high-powered lines, has a very negative effect on our emotional and mental, physical, because we are electromagnetic conscious beings, and this I could see could be a disaster. I wouldn't want this energy just all around the world powering your electric motor when my phone. I'm wondering about trillions of phones going all over the place, and you know, it's like I think you're opening a can of worms, and the
worms are already out of the can.
Yeah, I know, but this
I didn't open
technology,
them.
this technology, and I don't see any advantage.
If you follow where I began
If I
about
can
living in,
produce all my energy for my own home, I don't need to be transferring it all around the world. And
it's not about. I don't think, you know, it's already energy it's already everywhere. Okay, it's if we're no, I'm not.
You are.
It's already here. It's already a force.
That's right. But we're not sending these things all over the world, trying to power your car and my generator. I mean,
it's already happening to what everybody's already got it going on.
Unfortunately,
and I think, you know, there are negative wavelengths and there's positive.
I think he's got a good point.
Well, let's clear the cables. Let's shut down everything. We'll be.
Putting more of it out there, but there is kind of one question that's kind of begs here. Even though we keep putting more and more energy out there, we keep living longer and longer, and everyone keeps screaming, the sky's falling, and there are some things that do affect us directly, but it's kind of strange. We do keep living longer and longer the more energy we keep putting out there. So, you know, it kind of begs the question, have we explored enough to know if this is a good energy or a bad energy? And I'm not certain that, I don't know, Mike, what do you think?
I think we haven't explored enough to really know, but there are symptoms that they somewhat say are problems. But I would also want to go back to what I originally stated. If we design our electrical systems to be you can take, what is it, an encephalograph that they put for measuring brain waves, whatever it is, our biorhythms fluctuate at a particular frequency. They measure your pulse. That is your frequency. Okay? That's your pressure. If our systems are built along those lines that are in resonance in some formation of design, I believe we are actually in a very positive condition other than an opposite. We want the regenerative effect, not the degenerative effect. I believe now we have those things you're talking about as a degenerative effect.
Mike,
If that's
I'm going to interrupt for housekeeping moment here. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready for the evening conference social in a little bit. Mr. Ellswick himself is checking on the food as we speak. With your permission, I was thinking we'd run the Q&A until he calls, and he's going to be calling one of my constituents right here and says the food's ready. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. All right. Hey, by the way, on the subject of positive, negative energy, there's a coil. Back on October 9th, I was the wonderful, dubious recipient of a blast from a live mortar shell. And on the subject of energy and coils and stuff. And later on sometime I'll show you, but there was a hole right here in me, and there was shrapnel in it. And you notice there's no hair on the inside of my arms, and most of my eyebrows and stuff are still kind of fresh. And my wife was holding off on cutting my hair because she said I had 2 hairlines because I had 1st and 2nd degree burns that kind of toasted off my clothing, and I had some 3rd degree ash and soot burns down here. But a coil that, if you guys want to see it, my son wound it, and some aloe vera and vitamin oil. The doctor said it would be 18 to 20 months before I'd get any skin over the wound, and it would require extensive skin grafting. Where's John Arthur? Wherever he's at, he'll tell you it was 32 days, and it was skinned over, no scab, no surgery, and all of the shrapnel festered out. We've got time-lapse pictures of it taken every 2 days. But we're talking about electromagnetic energies and
The
challenges.
chi. I forgot to mention the chi. That's what I believe the radiant force is. So those that understand how the chi works,
Yeah.
that's what these coils, if you tune to that, that's where we want to go with our science.
Energy can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. You can stick your hand in the microwave and, we're going to challenge the rest of our life, So, keeping an open mind and being cautious for what's good and what could be potentially hazardous, as he brought up. That's a very good point. We as scientists and researchers need to keep that in mind every step of the way. And I'm glad he brought that up, because along with the good, there's always the potential for bad. Okay, who's next in line, Mitch?
My name is Josh.
Pardon? Oh, the social. The social will be just out. You go out the door, double doors here, turn right, stay just inside the railing to the edge of the building. There's a big pavilion out back there, and it's going to be catered, and we're even going to have a little music and maybe some karaoke and goof off, get sideways and out of control. I mean, to have some fun, But as soon as they call, we'll let you know about when the food's ready, okay? Request lines are open. Next victim, please. Next customer, next caller, please.
My name is Josh Toms, and my question is, have you ever heard of a man named Edward Leeds Scowland out of Coil Castle?
I believe it's right.
He was messing around with crystal radios and variable capacitors, and it reminds me of your work.
There are many out there that have found the same thing, and I'm just repeating information that it's real. I'm just helping validate, give more evidence to maybe a different picturization from a different angle of this vast arena of saying this is real, so why are we doing this?
Hi, I'm Marky Broden, Marco's son. I wanted to ask, we're talking about frequencies through one wire, a single copper wire. How will this impact, say, like in the island of Kauai or some desert cities in California, where they don't believe in towers, telephone towers where there's wires and it's all fiber optics? How does the frequency work in that?
If I can lead you to an idea here, let's see where I put it. There's a little pamphlet. It's called Amid the Pyramids. Now, inside of here is how I got some more ideas written by this Ernest Norman. I believe if you take a Tesla coil, which gives you a particular frequency, you can put it into a laser. You can take that laser, send it as a beam, step it back down through a Tesla coil, and you have power. Without wires, you sight it like a rifle somewhere. Far, far away, however it is, that is, whatever design you need, however it's set up. So are these things all doable? They are. I think it's all, there's all I was trying to do, again, is describe the principle, take the principle and use it where it fits into, if it's your research or whatever you're doing, I'm working on something else that I'm using the principle for. So however that may fit. I think the idea of other coils, more efficient designs, again, this is 100-year-old concept, so where have we gone in 100 years with wrapping coils, making them work correctly? I think this could go a long, long ways in the idea. It's just that this gives you a visual of what I was doing of exploring the force. I'm exploring electricity and magnetism. But to use this on some way of commercial process, go for it. I mean, I think that's really, it opens the door to the future.
Hi, I wanted to mention a few things that Tesla talked about. Tuning the primary to the secondary, he mentioned that along with the LC capacitance and inductance, that you could also just straight weigh the amount of wire that you have, the amount of metal there is in the primary, and then weigh the secondary and weigh that amount of metal, and that it would actually sync. And also wanted to ask, have you ever experimented with any of the spiral coils that he...
A little bit, and they do work. I have made a spider wound coil, and it works really well for a receiver. I've never experimented with it. Again, it's, you know, everything costs money. It costs time, and when you got to work for a living, you got to, you got to pay for what you got to do. But I think it's, again, it's another one of those things for people to try. The flat pancake coils, I believe, are very efficient. If you look up on the internet, the Electrotherapy Museum, there's a lot of very interesting and cool stuff, plenty of contacts there. There's plenty of Tesla research. If you really want to get into looking up Tesla stuff, there's a lot of it out there.
Yeah, I just really also wanted to stress looking into Konstantin Mel's experiments, because he was able to show that there's two different types of frequencies that Tesla coils can run off of. Sure. One is the DC pulse and one is the other, and in his experimentation he was able to show that with a normal AC waves that we use today with cell phones and so forth, that you can block them with your hand and other and big Faraday cages or what they call. Sure. But with the other type of frequency, if it's completely grounded and it's a DC pulse energy, there's no way to block these signals, and they'll go through anything.
I hope I've, stimulated some ideas, shown some new ways of kind of seeing that a Tesla coil is not just a tool for adolescent mayhem. It can be used for something. And I think that's really what we're trying to do, is to find new means and methods of being able to transpose electricity, have it a usable function in our lives that actually help us, not hinder us in our progression. I believe electricity is the life force, and if we understand these things more correctly, that we'll move ourselves forward in our evolution. I think that's really the whole goal here, is to not evolve back to a caveman. There's nothing wrong with that, but
we just had a 7-minute warning.
Okay. Very quick thing, as the unofficial runner between the Philadelphia conference and this one, you were wondering about, people were wondering about other research. We know from the Philadelphia conference last year we had Gary Peterson doing this, and then this year we had Lim Cha doing this as well. So those are two more researchers, one in Colorado, one in Pennsylvania. And we know that there are many other people who don't come forward and who are working on this as well. So it's definitely going on in more locations than we can possibly count right now. Sure. But that Lim Chua demonstration was especially good. And I want to thank you for your demo too. This is awesome.
Hopefully it's inspiring.
It has.
It kind of gives some credibility what Tesla was trying to do with electricity.
Grandma is thought of an invention that for like house powering. It's like something, there's like a big thing that gives sound, and then there's a ball, and the sound passes through this like magnetic energy, and then that's somehow.
I don't know enough to say yes or no.
Yeah, would that work? And
I think there's a lot of different ways of doing things, and again, if we understand the principle, I think sound is part of this, because all of these things are vibrations, and that's really all this is. It's about vibrations.
Magnets.
Sure. There's a lot of good ideas out there.
And Grandma's idea is to make the electricity more efficient, and this huge ball powers the entire city. It powers the entire
the Bedini motor, a lot of these other things that are going on, they're real. That's very cool.
My name is Dr. McBride. I'm from UNM at the chemistry department over there. I'm actually working with Maluski. We'll be speaking on Sunday, so come to that. It'll be fun. Having worked on cold fusion back in '89 at Texas A&M, one of the criticisms was demonstrating excess power. I am wondering if you've done any measurements or know anyone has who's measured the power in versus what you're getting out.
You know, I haven't.
And
that
efficiency.
was a question that could be, and I think it could be easily done. They make devices of power in, power out. Again, why I don't want to do that? Because again, these are just sloppy coils. If they were all tuned and this system was made specifically for, you know, everything was tuned, get your scope out, measure the length, right size wire, right optimal design where your very beginning oscillation of your wavelengths was exactly right, time, the right frequencies, would that work better? Would you get a better output? It depends on how these things are constructed. Again, I have found that sometimes the further away that I was from the transmitter, it worked better. Because and there's a writing that Tesla did, he was following a storm, and this was in his Colorado Springs notes. And what he found, he had, I think it's what they called a coherer at the time of radios way back when. And it's a device that has iron filings in it. And that made the conductivity. Well, as the lightning struck, the storm coming to where it was, when the lightning pulses hit the ground, it sent off a signal that fired up that coherer, which gave him a crackle that this storm was coming and the signal got strong. There were nodal points along that storm passing through for almost 250 miles away. And he said when it got to certain points along there, that's how he figured that there was certain relationships around the world that these nodal points exist. There's patterns, just like we showed with the Fibonacci sequence or whatever, however you want to see that. But if we match that at those nodal points, the power is induced at a greater potential. And that's what I believe he found at that point in Colorado Springs, which gave him evidence to say, I'm going to build that tower in New York. That's just what I picked up and read. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Leas.
there you go.
Good enough. We'll give him a warm round of applause here. Okay, Mike can take about 3 or 5 minutes worth of questions. The first